thinking about it, and then I realized you gotta do what you're gonna like. You can't go and do something that you're not gonna like, because you're not gonna be happy. When you're not happy, you don't work well. You're late getting into work. How many people here show up on time or ahead of schedule for their favorite classes? How many people drag it in there and just mail it in for the classes that are the snooze fests? That was me. You know, I got there early so I could engage my prof before we started, kind of get a hint of what's going to happen, and just talk to him or her about stuff, because I really liked and dug that class. Same thing with jobs. And if you had a job that you can't wait to get to, sitting around on Sunday is really cool, because you can't wait to get up in the morning and get to work. Where sometimes if you have a job and it's Sunday, it's like, oh God, I don't want tomorrow to come. I just want to stay here and not be there. So my career decision at the time then was go and follow your heart, follow your passion, follow your love, and I went to CBC. I declined that other job off. And it was the best decision that I made in my career at that time. I went to CBC and I learned all these mad skills, and I had fun. I loved doing it. They kept me around longer than 6 months. They kept me around for 2.5 years until I got another job offer to move to Saskatoon. And my journalism career was taking off. Things were happening. People were calling me, wanting me to go work for them. And it was like, wow, and that's because I followed my heart. When I was at Ralco, it didn't seem like work. When I was at Edmonton, it didn't seem like work. I remember sitting in Edmonton at the newsroom, and I'm just looking around, and I looked at my desk and I had a cup of coffee, I had a newspaper, I had the computer open, and I'm like, they're actually paying me to sit here and drink coffee and read the newspaper. Like, I'm getting paid to do this. It wasn't great money, but I was still getting paid. And it was like, wow, this is an awesome job. And I can pick up the phone and I can call anybody and ask them their business. Stick my nose in their business. And I can write stories. And then next day I can look in the newspaper and see my story there. And I thought, wow, man, this is awesome. And that's the rush that I chased during my journalism career. Then there came a point when I was in it for about a dozen years, when I started getting just burnt out. It just became a job. I'd show up, go in, do my thing, come home. Show up, go in and do my thing, come home. Once in a while, I'd find a story and it would make me go hard again for a little bit, but once the story is over, it was back into that. So I knew, okay, maybe it's time you tried something different. So I made a career move. But usually when I make career moves or decisions, I think about it for a while. I don't just jump into it and think, yeah, this is it, let's go try it. I have to say, okay, how is this going to help me in my future career, in my plan? Is it going to give me some new skills that I don't have? Is it going to provide some new contacts for me? Is it going to build my name? So when I decided to leave Ralco for the FSIN, I knew that I would learn some new skills, some more management skills. I knew that I would learn some new political skills. I knew that I would also learn how to put out fires, because there is a lot of fires when you work at the FSIN. Fires that nobody even hears about, but they're burning now, and you got to put them out. So it's your job not to let those fires spread. So I learned a lot of those things, but it's also a very stressful place to work. You got work that never ends. You got people that have huge demands. You have limited amount of resources. So you need to really put yourself be ready for that. So I go to the gym on a regular basis. I talk to people on a regular basis about how I'm feeling, and I look after myself. I go to bed early, I get up early, I get my rest, and I eat properly. Those types of things also you need to do if you're going to survive in this industry. Either side, news or communications, because it's a very stressful environment some days. So you need to be able to walk out of the office and leave it there and go home and take on that other thing to get away from it for a while. The days that I knew I was overwhelmed were the days that I took it home with me and I couldn't sleep. And those days were becoming more and more, and that's why a year ago I decided I was going to make a change. Okay, so now we're getting into business here. Yeah. Excuse me, Sam. All right, so now for the career move, and this is where I needed to really think about this. And I started thinking, of course, what do I want to do? I was at the FSIN for 5.5 years, and I was tired, I was burnt out, I was exhausted, I had enough. What do I want to do? Do I want to continue my career in communications? Do I want to try to go back to journalism? But if going back to journalism meant been there, done that. So I started thinking, okay, you've always wanted to start a business, your own business. You've always wanted to start a newspaper. So I started thinking about that, and I started thinking, what do I got to do to get this off the ground? What do I need to do? Where's that? Okay. Start a business. Okay. So one thing is I've never had a business before, so I don't really have anything to fall back on. But then I started thinking about what did I do at the beginning of university? What did I do for every major decision that I had? I always had a plan. So I started working on a business plan. And okay, so I bought a book about business plan writing, started trying to read it, and I started thinking, okay, go to the internet. So I went to the internet, I Googled business plans, and a whole bunch of links came up. So I started picking through them, and then I found a business plan link with the Royal Bank, RBC. I clicked on there, and 3 PDFs of 3 businesses came up. So I downloaded those, printed them off, and started reading through them, and started looking at all the points that I needed to do. And then I started thinking about, okay, what's the number one asset that I have? Started thinking about that, and then I realized I was the number one asset that I had. Because I spent 15 years in the media and communications, because I developed that contact base 20 years ago and keep developing it, because I stayed in touch with those people, because people knew who I was from my work, the work that I did. So I needed to build this business around me, and I became the brand. But I needed it also to attach something to it. So I started thinking about that types of stuff. I also started thinking about, okay, if you're gonna start a newspaper, where are you gonna have your newspaper? Are there any markets available around here? Are there any markets where there's less competition? Are there any markets that have specific needs that maybe I can provide services to those needs? Then I started thinking about, okay, in the north, they got the Prince Albert Tribune for First Nations newspapers. In Meadow Lake, they got the, what's it called? Meadow Lake, I think it's Progress or something like that. Terry LaValle, or Terry Villeneuve runs that paper. In Saskatoon, they got Eagle Feather News with John. Regina, well, there's the new Res X magazine, but I'm not really competing with them. So I started thinking, okay, where? Then I started thinking about my roots as a kid when I talked about reading the newspapers all the time and wanting all that information. There used to be a publication called the Saskatchewan Indian. It was delivered to our band office. Every morning every time a new bundle came in, I'd be down there and I'd grab it and go and read it because I liked it. The stories were about community, they were about the people in the community, about the events. It had some razor sharp political viewpoints. I think it was one of the best magazines around. So I thought, if anything, I want to publish something like that, a community-driven paper.